The Haversham dining room wasn't just a room, it was a stage for cold perfection. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto polished mahogany, silverware gleamed with sterile brilliance, and the air hung thick with the cloying scent of truffles and unspoken disdain. I smoothed the napkin, real linen, unlike anything in my childhood home, feeling the unfamiliar silk of the designer dress Julian had insisted I wear cling like borrowed skin. Across the vast expanse, Eleanor Haversham, my mother-in-law, presided. Her gaze, when it landed on me, wasn't just cold. It was dismissive, like brushing lint from priceless velvet. Julian squeezed my hand beneath the table. "Just breathe, Clara," he murmured, his voice warm but laced with an undercurrent of familiar tension. "It's one dinner." His love had been my anchor through 3 years of Eleanor's iceberg smiles and backhanded compliments about my practical upbringing, raised by a single fiercely loving schoolteacher mom in a modest apartment. My career as a children's book illustrator seemed frivolous in Eleanor's world of hedge funds and inherited portfolios. I'd swallowed it all, for Julian, believing his love was worth the constant, quiet erosion. Dinner was a masterclass in aristocratic torture. Charles, Julian's father, mumbled about market volatility. Julian spoke passionately about his sustainable architecture firm, a beacon of modernity Eleanor tolerated only because it was profitable. Then came the inevitable descent into lineage. Traced the Haversham line back to the Mayflower, of course, Eleanor stated, as if announcing the sun rose by her command. Such continuity, such assurance. Her eyes slid to me. Stability is paramount, wouldn't you agree, Clara? Knowing where one truly belongs. Julian shifted uncomfortably. "Clara's family values are incredibly strong, Mother." "Values, yes," Eleanor conceded, her voice like poisoned honey. She delicately dabbed her lips. "Though sometimes circumstances, backgrounds, can instill a certain resourcefulness, I suppose." "Your mother, dear," she addressed me directly, a viper uncoiling. "Such a dedicated teacher, shaping young minds, though perhaps not the most influential ones. Cleaning up other people's messes, in a way." The air crackled. My grip tightened on the cool stem of my water glass. Julian opened his mouth, but Eleanor wasn't done. She placed her fork down with a deliberate clink that silenced the room. "Julian," she sighed, a theatrical weariness in her voice, "has always possessed a charitable heart, drawn to the unexpected, the overlooked." She turned her full glacial attention on me, a predator cornering prey. "It's endearing, really, his desire to elevate." Her lips thinned into a cruel parody of a smile. "But one must be realistic. Sometimes what seems like a hidden gem." She paused, letting the silence thicken, heavy and suffocating. Julian looked pale, frozen. Charles studied his plate. The clatter from the kitchen ceased. Eleanor leaned forward, her voice dropping to a venomous carrying whisper that stripped away all pretense. "Is just the trash my son brought home." Silence. Absolute, deafening silence. The insult didn't just sting, it detonated. Heat flooded my cheeks, then receded, leaving me numb. The opulent room swam. Julian's choked "mother" sounded miles away. For 3 years I'd absorbed the microaggressions, the subtle exclusions, the condescension. I'd done it for the man I loved, believing his affection was a shield. This wasn't a shield. It was a public execution. The silence stretched. Eleanor held my gaze, triumph glittering in her eyes, waiting for tears, for flight, for the breakdown that would confirm her verdict. Julian remained statue still, his jaw clenched, but his eyes held only helpless apology, no fire, no defense. The final thread of my patience, the last vestige of hope for his backbone, snapped. Something shifted deep within me. Not fury, not yet. A profound, icy calm descended. The kind that comes when you realize you hold all the cards and your opponent is blindfolded. I slowly placed my water glass down. The sound was precise, deliberate, cutting through the silence. "Is that so, Eleanor?" My voice was unnervingly steady, devoid of tremor. It wasn't loud, but it commanded the room. Julian flinched. "Clara, please, let's not—" "No, Julian," I interrupted, my gaze fixed on Eleanor, a small, enigmatic smile touching my lips. "Let's have clarity, since we're discussing value and trash." I paused, letting the word hang. "It's fascinating, your obsession with lineage, with perceived worth." I leaned back slightly, a posture of newfound ease that felt alien yet powerful. "Because for the past 18 months, I've been sitting at this table, listening to you, knowing something that fundamentally changes this little narrative." Eleanor's smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of irritation. "More theatrics? How predictable for your background." "Not theatrics," I said softly, reaching for the small, elegant clutch beside my plate. A genuine Chanel Julian had gifted me, one of the few luxuries I'd accepted. Just facts. Facts held by my lawyers until my 30th birthday, or my marriage. Whichever came first. I pulled out a single, crisp, cream-colored envelope sealed with an embossed insignia. I didn't open it. Its presence was enough. This arrived the week after Julian and I returned from our honeymoon. Julian stared at the envelope, confusion warring with dawning apprehension. "Lawyers?" "Clara, what is this? What lawyers?" "My biological mother's lawyers," I stated, my voice clear and calm. "You see, Eleanor, my adopted mother, Sarah, the wonderful teacher you just disparaged, raised me with boundless love. But she was always honest. She adopted me as a newborn. My biological mother, she told me, was very young, very scared, and came from a prominent family who couldn't accept the situation. She gave me up to give me a chance. She died when I was 10. Eleanor scoffed, regaining some composure. "A sad story, dear, but hardly relevant to your current performance." "Oh, but it is," I countered, my smile widening slightly, chillingly. "Because my biological mother didn't just disappear. She was Isabella Rossi, heiress to the Rossi fortune. Shipping, luxury goods, real estate. You might have heard of it. Larger, I believe, than the Haversham holdings." I let that sink in, watching the first cracks appear in Eleanor's porcelain facade. She never forgot me. She set up a trust, a vast, obscenely vast trust, controlled by ironclad legal stipulations. I couldn't access a penny, know the details, or even know who she truly was until I turned 30, or got married, whichever milestone I reached first. The air left the room. Charles choked on his wine. Julian looked utterly shattered, his eyes wide with disbelief and a terrible, dawning realization. "Isabella, Rossi, Clara, you never said." "Why would I?" I asked, turning my calm gaze on him. My heart ached for the love I'd felt, but it was buried under layers of cold disappointment. When would it have been right? Before the wedding, when your mother interrogated my finances? Or after, when she made her first practical background comment? Or perhaps last month, when she helpfully suggested I take etiquette lessons? I looked back at Eleanor, whose face was draining of all color, her hand trembling slightly as it rested on the table. "You see, Julian, every time she insulted me, belittled my mother, my life, every time you sat there silent, offering only apologies later, it wasn't just hurting me. It was showing me exactly who you both were. Viewers, the twist unveiled. Clara's power wasn't in a blood connection to Eleanor, but in the immense, silent wealth she inherited because she was given up. Her adoptive mother's love was her true foundation, but the Rossi fortune was a hidden arsenal. She endured the Havershams' cruelty not out of weakness, but with the profound knowledge of her own security and worth. Julian's failure to defend her wasn't just cowardice. It was a failure that proved he didn't deserve her truth or her future. Her silence was a test he failed catastrophically. I knew exactly who I was, I continued, my voice gaining strength. I knew my worth wasn't tied to a nameplate or a bank statement, but to the woman who raised me and the talent I've built. But this, I tapped the envelope, this was a fact about your world, Eleanor, a fact that makes your precious bloodlines and your condescending charity look, well, rather small. Isabella Rossi chose my adoptive mother to raise me. She ensured I would never want for anything, but only when I was settled, an adult, hopefully loved for myself. I looked pointedly at Julian. The secrecy was her final protection, to ensure no one married me for this. The implication hung heavy. Julian flinched as if struck. Eleanor found her voice, shrill and desperate. This is preposterous, a fabrication, some gold-digging fantasy. Is it? I asked mildly. I pulled out my phone, a simple model Eleanor had once sneered at. With a few taps, I pulled up an email from Rossi Holdings' legal office, the header unmistakable, detailing a scheduled meeting for the previous week to formalize the transfer of assets and discuss my role on the board. I turned the screen towards them. The blood drained completely from Eleanor's face as she saw the official letterhead, the staggering figures mentioned in the preview text. The lawyers concluded everything on Monday, I said, slipping the phone back. The trust is dissolved. Everything is mine. Everything Isabella Rossi built. Everything you value so highly. I stood up. The borrowed silk dress felt different now. Not like a costume, but like armor I no longer needed. You called me trash, Eleanor. You measured my worth by the dust under your feet. I picked up the envelope and my clutch. But the joke is on you. The trash your son brought home owns more than you ever will. And she's leaving. Julian shot up, panic contorting his features. Clara, wait, please, I didn't know. I swear, I love you. We can. You love the idea of me, I corrected him, my voice firm but devoid of malice, only finality. The project, the woman you thought needed your world. You never fought for me, Julian, not against her. You let her poison every room we shared. That silence spoke louder than any "I love you" ever could. I looked at Eleanor, a woman reduced to stunned, trembling insignificance by the weight of her own miscalculation. And you? You mistook my quiet for weakness, my background for poverty. You were so busy looking down, you never saw the foundation I stood on, or the legacy waiting in the wings. I walked towards the grand archway leading out. No one moved. The Haversham dynasty sat frozen in the ruins of their own prejudice. Clara! Julian's voice broke. Where are you going? I paused at the threshold, the cool air from the hallway beckoning. I didn't look back. To live a life where my value was never in question, where the only legacy that matters is the one I choose to build. Starting with buying my mother that big sunny house by the sea she always dreamed of. Goodbye, Julian. I walked out. The heavy door closed behind me with a soft, final click. The silence of the Haversham dining room was absolute. Outside, the night air was crisp, clean, free. I didn't have the ruby ring of blood revelation, but I had something better: freedom, truth, and the immense, quiet power of knowing exactly who I was, Clara Rossi, beloved daughter of Sarah, heir to Isabella, and finally, gloriously, master of her own destiny. The viral story wouldn't be about the insult, but about the swan who endured the ugly duckling taunts, knowing all along she possessed the wings to soar far above the poisoned pond. The silence hadn't been submission, it had been strategy, and the victory was infinitely sweeter for the wait.